If you want to understand how Raila Odinga is so corrupt and a conman, look at even the way that he relates to the regional leaders of Africa. Take the DRC. Raila Odinga was supposed to be the greatest friend for Felix Tshisekedi. He wanted, and he was actually doing smuggling of Congo's minerals, gold, diamonds. Raila Odinga is a multi-billionaire, okay, in dollar terms, because of corruption, because of smuggling, because of money laundering that he has been engaging in. But in the recent past, Raila Odinga has been supporting Kagame, who is being backed by the Western imperialists to destabilize Congo so that they can continue to loot Congo's minerals. Conman Raila Odinga and tyrant Ruto for selling and betraying Kizza Besigye, who visited Kenya for a legal function a month or so ago and was abducted in Nairobi, illegally renditioned to Uganda, put in a military jail, and subjected to horrendous treatment. We call on tyrant Yoweri Museveni to immediately release Kizza Besigye. Secondly, I have to thank and congratulate Africans from Morocco to South Africa, from Togo to Somalia, who stood with Kenyans in rejecting conman Raila Odinga from Africa Union Council chairmanship. Viva and bravo. You have demonstrated to the world that conmanship is unacceptable and will be rejected in the entire African continent. They went to Addis Ababa thinking that they were going to bamboozle, they were going to bribe, they were going to intimidate and threaten, they were going to impress African heads of state and foreign ministers with their primitive opulence and plutocracy. And Africa has shown them, it doesn't matter how much money you have. It does not matter how much money you have stolen. We are going to stand for Pan-Africanism. Let us dissect the meaning of conman Raila Odinga's defeat. What does it mean? Let me tell you why I analyzed Raila's impending and now defeat with scientific precision. It was not a prophecy. It was a scientific analysis. What was it that led to this complete defeat of conman Raila Odinga and his buddy, tyrant William Kipchirchir Ruto? Number one, Raila Odinga and Ruto supported Israeli against the Palestinians and still do. They say that they stood with Israel. So many of us stood with Palestine and have remained steadfast in fighting for the Palestinian sovereignty, territorial sovereignty, their rights as a people, self-determination, and their right to be free like everybody else. Palestinians are not second-class human beings. And if you love human life, you must stand with Palestine. So when Raila Odinga and his puppet William Ruto stood with Israel, all peace-loving citizens of the world had to start seeing them in that context. They were not with us. The moment Ruto stood with Israel and against the Palestinian rights, all Muslims in the entire African continent could not stand with Raila Odinga. All Arabs could not stand with Raila Odinga. All revolutionaries that have stood against Israel, like the entire SADC, South African group of countries, the former frontline states that fought against apartheid, in South Africa, could not stand with Raila Odinga. So Raila Odinga lost 3/4 of the African continent just by supporting Israel. So that's number one. So I knew there was no way Raila Odinga was going to win. You cannot win in the world today when you are with fascists and racists and genocidal lunatics in the world. You cannot win. So that's number one. Number two, Raila Odinga is a conman, a quintessential conman and a pathological liar, just like Ruto. Raila Odinga betrayed me in 2018. And then last year, Raila Odinga betrayed Dr. Kizza Besigye. This is a man who has fought in Uganda for freedom for the last 35, 40 years. Traveled to Kenya like everybody else in East Africa, legally, boarded a plane in Entebbe, landed at the JKIA, was intending to attend a book launch, went to meet his friends in an apartment in Nairobi, legally, and was kidnapped from Nairobi. Kizza Besigye, against my strong advice, and I advised him publicly in 2022 not to support Raila Odinga, decided to come to Kenya and campaign for Raila Odinga. They took photos, they took videos, they ate, they were very good to each other, purportedly. And then when Raila lost, Kizza Besigye went back to Uganda and continued with his life. So why is it that Raila Odinga has kept quiet since Kizza Besigye was kidnapped from Nairobi? Because Raila Odinga is a transactional charlatan who only believes in his interests and himself and his families, who only believes in money that he earns from all manner of murky sources, who believes that he only supports those with power, those with weapons, those with money. So because Ruto is president and can give him money and can give him the trinkets, the bodyguards, the limousines, 30 pieces of silver, Raila Odinga betrayed Kizza Besigye. On that basis alone, Raila Odinga demonstrated that he was not a true Pan-Africanist. A true Pan-Africanist has to be an honest man with integrity, has to be a man and woman who believes in the rule of law, who believes in the principle of constitutionalism, who believes on respect for human rights, who believes on the supremacy of the Constitution, which comes with the Bill of Rights. Raila Odinga does not believe on any of these things or in any of these things. So, in that context, Raila Odinga was going to export to Addis Ababa, to the AU, and to the AUC, all the bad manners that he has learned and is perpetuating in Kenya. Point number three. The glorious, heroic Gen Zs of Kenya went to the streets in 2024, June 25th. Our revolutionary Gen Zs mobilized, organized, and opposed the Finance Bill 2024. They mobilized, they protested, they took over parliament, and they stopped Ruto in his tracks. Ruto was in the process of implementing the most punitive IMF imposed conditions of taxation without representation, of taxation without benefit, of taxation without rights, of being turned slaves in your own country. And after that happened, and Ruto was just about to be removed from his legitimate perch at the State House, Raila Odinga went behind the Gen Z's backs and did a deal, an evil contract, an arrangement with the abductor and the chief mass murderer in East Africa, the most corrupt man in Africa, the second most corrupt man in the entire world, William Kipchirchir Ruto, stood in front of the entire world at the KICC and announced that he was going to support Ruto. He didn't care that Ruto had murdered hundreds of Gen Zs after the protest, during the protest, and in days after that has perpetrated a systematic abduction of young people, disappeared them, tortured them, and continues to kill many of them. Raila didn't care about that. Raila didn't care about the real grievance that led to the Gen Z revolution. The fact that the Gen Zs, more than 65% of them, highly qualified, young with a lot of energy and vision, are unemployed. And there are no reasonable prospects that they will get employment this year, next year, the year after, 10 years from now. That is not in the plan of these power barons, the bandits in Nairobi. And the Gen Zs could see that and said, look, we own the country. Kenya does not belong to William Ruto. Kenya belongs to 56, 60 million Kenyans, 65% of whom are Gen Zs or younger. These are the owners of the country. These are the people that the future belongs to. But no, Raila did not stand with the Gen Zs. Raila did not stand with the future. Raila stood with his stomach. Raila stood with his greed. Raila stood with his conmanship and arrogance and said he was going to join Ruto in cracking down on the critics of the government. That's point number 3. Having betrayed the Gen Zs in the face of a vicious, most humane and cruel, barbaric crackdown, having betrayed the Gen Zs who had shed blood while campaigning for their rights, having betrayed the Gen Zs that were just about to lead an overhaul, a complete transformation of the Kenyan rotten political system, having betrayed the Gen Zs that were leading the revolution, Raila Odinga could not be elected in Addis Ababa, because that would be a bad betrayal for the entire Gen Zs in the African continent, which is probably 70% of the population of the African continent, billions of people. The Africa Union is supposed to be the body that symbolizes, that epitomizes the unity, even if it is rhetorical unity of the African continent, of the African people. And that unity is supposed to be unity of purpose. It's supposed to be unity of a vision for a freer, a more prosperous, a liberated African continent. It's supposed to be a unity of values or in values. Values of freedom, values of liberation, values of prosperity, values of love, values of everything good. It cannot be values of theft, values of looting, values of plutocracy, values of tyranny, values of barbarism, values of retrogression, values of primitivity, values of torture, values of abduction, which is what Ruto symbolizes in Africa today. Ruto is an existential threat to all the positive values that Pan-Africanists stand for. Raila Odinga is Ruto's chief facilitator in Kenya, in the African region. If you want to understand how Raila Odinga is so corrupt and a con man, look at even the way that he relates to the regional leaders of Africa. Take the DRC. Raila Odinga was supposed to be the greatest friend for Felix Tshisekedi, who is the president of DRC Congo. He wanted, and he was actually doing smuggling of Congo's minerals, gold, diamonds. Raila Odinga is a multi-billionaire, okay, in dollar terms, because of corruption, because of smuggling, because of money laundering, because of plutocracy that he has been engaging in. So he's a friend of Tshisekedi. Tshisekedi has visited him, even at home in Karen. But in the recent past, Raila Odinga has been supporting Kagame, who is being backed by the Western imperialists to destabilize Congo so that they can continue to loot Congo's minerals. So you can see that he doesn't care about friendship. He doesn't care about the fact that the Congolese have been suffering for the last 60 years. He doesn't care that the West don't really give a damn about Africa. Trump doesn't give a damn about Africa.